The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Hey, hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit. It is time once again for our weekly feature, The Week That Was. Every week, I have a wonderful panel of people here to break down the big stories of the week. This week is no exception. As per usual, we have two people from Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel and Nancy Derringer. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Attorney Todd Perkins has joined us once again. Why? Because we like him. Thank you, Todd, for being here. We appreciate it. And, of course, my friend Greg Bowens is with us once again. He is a longtime PR person. He, of course, is the former spokesperson for Mayor Dennis Archer and a former journalist at the Detroit News as well. So, Greg, welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So last night we were treated to what was, fortunately for most of us, I think kind of a boring speech from President Joe Biden last night, commemorating the 1-year anniversary of the COVID lockdowns, really, which is what we've been dealing with for the last year in this country. A couple of things came out of this yesterday. One, he says he wants to direct all states to open up the vaccinations for everybody starting on May 1st, which I think is a pretty aggressive timeline. And two, saying if everybody does what they're supposed to do, we could have a rockin' 4th of July celebration this year. And just in case you didn't have enough gunshots and fireworks in your neighborhood, I have a feeling that it's going to be a banger this year, so to speak, when it comes to the 4th of July here in Metro Detroit. But commemorating that, I think it was important last night. And like I said, it was kind of a boring speech for his first address to the nation in the wake of all of this kind of stuff. And he did have some things I think that, he successfully can talk about right now and say, hey, we're making some progress on this. Greg, let's start with you for just a second. You watched the speech last night. You're the one that said, I was bored. I almost fell asleep. That's a nice change, isn't it?
It's a totally nice change, man, to not have to wait for the next, insult to drop from the podium. And, I did notice a couple things about it. The caring tone was really great. I mean, I felt like he cared. But then I sensed something you guys will recognize because we're Michiganders. And that was the influence. It had to be the influence of former governor, now, what is she, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. When the president would lean like this into the mic and start whispering, I really need you to get the shot. I was like, that's Jennifer Granholm right there. She must have got in on this. But to, whispering to make a point, I thought was really cool. And it seemed, sincere, and the sort of leaning forward into the camera made it seem like that he was just, talking to me. But I already got my show,
Grandpa Joe. I mean, he's Grandpa Joe. He's sort of the wise old grandpa.
I think that it was his moment to finally, after watching Trump all this time, finally saying, this is how you do it. You do a Roosevelt kind of thing, and you say, hey, we're all in this war together. We'll get out of it. There's going to be horrible times, but we're getting there. I think it was finally his time to say, hey, Trump, this is how you do it.
Go ahead, Todd.
I'm just a fan of Biden. I've liked his story, how he has endured over the years. And it's just, what it is. It's almost like Hemingway couldn't write a story like this for an individual's life, who now he is truly that statesman that we need. He's truly the person that would, I mentioned a lot of times how, being in business, you look at branding. And the branding of the United States back in 2014, 2015 was the #1 brand in the world. Within 6 months, or maybe 9 months of Trump being in office, we were at number 6. That was 2016 or 2017. So I can only imagine where we are now, but he's bringing it back. And, he is, the way that he speaks, the way that he talks, and knowing that he's overcoming a speech impediment. I think about all of those things that he does in his manner and effect, but also he's look at what he's done. This is something that hasn't been done. This bill hasn't been done something like this since Roosevelt. And so it's a huge bet.
And the timing of that, Todd, you're absolutely right. The timing of the speech was good because he was coming off the victory that he had on this COVID relief bill, which is hugely significant. And, I was listening to some commentary this morning, people saying, well, now he's got to go out on the road and sell this bill. And I'm thinking to myself, not really.
Why?
When people get that check in their pocket, that's what they're going to remember about this. The schools and the governments will get their money, all that kind of stuff, and that's going to be fine. But for the average person, they're going to look at this and say, wow, somebody actually did something.
But here's the thing, though. You think about it. Look what happened earlier this week. And this is, I can't even imagine who's my schmuck of the week is going to be. Think about these guys. As soon as, they voted against the bill. And as soon as they come out, as soon as the bill passes, they're like, yeah, restaurants are going to get money in their pocket. And, I mean, I've never seen so much throwing the rock and hiding your hand, as our grandparents might have said, out here. I mean, it is just ridiculous that, so he does have to sell it. He does, because what we're going to do is, no matter how great it is, some of the things Obama did, we all can admit we needed some kind of affordable medical act. And Obama did.
Sure.
But at the same time, he, it's still trying to attack it. He has to sell this because those little petty little individuals are going to go out because they're so divided by party lines. They're going to go out and try to muck this up. And I said muck. I did say muck. That's what they're going to do. And so he has to sell it. And it's so sad that he has to sell something that puts money in the average person.
I think, yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
Let's not pin this on a few sour individuals who will try to muck this up. There is an entire misinformation industry out there that is trying very hard to muck this up. I keep a fair number of very conservative Republicans kind of in my social networks, just so I can kind of see how stuff is landing, after an event like last night's speech. And you know what they're all talking about now, and what right-wing Twitter is talking about now?
Dr. Seuss.
How dare he tell us who and whether we can celebrate the 4th of July with, and it's just, I mean, that's your takeaway. It's like them talking about Dr. Seuss for 10 days now.
Yeah.
And, they can't even get the basic facts of that one right. So, I mean, I have moved from, I shouldn't say I've evolved. I kind of ping pong in my emotions when I deal with these people and see what they're talking about, between like anger, puzzlement, and lately a new element, which is just pity. And I'm hoping that the pity grows, because I agree with Todd. When people get out there and they start to see, what this is doing, particularly for poor children. Yeah. I mean, these child care and tax credits for low-income families with children are enormous. And once they see how that's going to work, I think it's going to sell itself. One more quick ad, though. You talked about the Affordable Care Act, Todd, and I got to tell you, there are an awful lot of people who just, every time they get a hangnail, they say, thanks, Obama. They still don't understand what that did, but you can't.
Well, I mean, there's going to be lower premiums for Obamacare recipients in Michigan as a result of this bill, which was, I think, it was the front page of the Free Press this morning. So,
and I'll be going on Obamacare later in the summer. So I'm,
Well, you do from a PR perspective, a media perspective, what we saw last night, I think you have to take into account that he also didn't try and preempt the evening news to give this address. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He let the news flow. They leaked out stuff, gave some of his speech out in advance, which gave people time to report on stuff and to get us set up for this. And he wasn't really braggadocious, I think, about getting this bill done. He just said that, hey, this is what we need to do because people are hurting. And that kind of empathy has been missing for the last 4 years. And quite frankly, I think is part of the reason why he was, able to win the election last time. And we need to see more of that. And juxtaposed against what Nancy and Todd and everybody's pointing out in terms of the response, from the Republicans, is it just makes you go, man, God, I'm glad we're out of that hole.
Right. I think it's interesting that it was his opportunity, sort of his second chance much like Merrick Garland, his second chance to actually do the stimulus the right way. Obama was held back by the GOP, who just kept saying, no, you can't get more stimulus money. We're going to slow down the economy because we're worried about debt. And then Trump came in and started using all this money that wasn't really to gin up things and make it, a super hyper economy where we had a super low unemployment, which was great. But he was spending money a ton.
Tax cuts, basically. The tax cuts.
Right. He was and getting away with it, and nobody, the Republicans never complained about the debt.
But have you ever noticed, though, they always talk about the Democrats and social programs and what it costs, but they never question when a Republican president is in office, him cutting taxes and doing away with those the legacy taxes as far as transition of wealth. From death taxes and things of that nature, it's almost the greatest transfer of wealth that the world has ever known, unvetted and unchecked that it's going to be. So, that's the type of revenue that's lost, and it's almost purposeful so that you can't fund these social programs.
Well, yeah, starve the beast. I mean, that's been the playbook since the Reagan era on the Republican side. Cut taxes to the point where you don't have the revenue to pay for these social programs. And Nancy, you mentioned the child tax credit and the way that that's going to work, and that's going to result in direct payments to families with children that need it. And I heard some complaints saying this is going to completely restructure the social safety net as we know it. To which I responded, good. It's not been working the way that it has been for a long time. And a lot of that money gets held up for different reasons and doesn't get directly into the pockets of the people that need it. And this is money that is going to go right back into the economy. Nobody's going to be socking this away in an offshore account anywhere. This money is going to go to your Dollar General, to your Kroger, to your Meijer, all those sorts of stores where people are going to buy food, formula, diapers, stuff like that. So this money is going to go right back into the economy and help us rebound. And if you're talking about deficit spending, I understand people's freaking out about the deficit, but the federal deficit is not the same as you having a negative balance in your checkbook. It's completely different. It's not the same thing. And people get this mistaken all the time. This is a good use of spending right now to get the economy back on its feet and to help us recover faster when we do get back to some sort of normalcy around here. It's going to take a while, but yeah, could it have been better targeted? Maybe. But sometimes, I mean, you're going to whiff on a couple of things here and there. But for the most part, it certainly seems as if this is designed specifically to go to the people that actually need the help.
Well,
what's really about that as well, I mean, is the way that it impacts people's everyday living, Craig, as you pointed out. But schools are starting to open up. And for a year now, kids have not had to worry about what kind of clothes they were going to wear. They weren't lugging backpacks back and forth. I mean, all these little things that we as parents know that add up when you have to spend for your kid to be in a classroom are things that we didn't have to spend. We had to spend other stuff, getting desks and tables and chairs and stuff like that. But now that they're going to be back in the classroom, that whole social dynamic that exists, has to be fed with money. You don't want your kid walking in there looking raggedy from his quarantine clothes.
Well, I mean, look,
kid in his pajamas,
Right.
Yeah.
But think about how much we've relied on the private sector and charitable organizations over the last few years for things like backpacks and food for kids to eat while they're at school. I mean, we're asking charitable organizations and the private sector to fund things that the social safety net is designed to deal with, and it has not done so successfully for a long time. I think about backpack drives and things that people do, and that's just not the way that it should be. And I understand that charities are there; they do good work. They're there to supplement what is out there, but clearly the burden has fallen on them in a disproportionate manner.
But here's the thing: what you're talking about is that argument is being championed to people who believe that the private sector should fund that aspect of the economy because they want to declare it socialism if you do too much, So, but yet, if you look at what do they call those government subsidies? Most of the government subsidies go to corporations and go to, just like the farmers out in the Midwest who are not to grow a particular crop. You're paid an entire sum of money not to grow that crop because of the balancing of the markets in that area. So, but at the end of the day, I look at, could it be targeted more? But you look at the 72 Lakers. They were 72-10, I think, right? They lost some, they lost 10 games, so, it's not going to be perfect. Everybody can always say, this could be done better, that could be done better. But at the end of the day, this is, I think, the most targeted, as I think, borrowing, Greg's words, it's the best targeted way of using this money. And it gets there right away. Like checks are going to be, nobody's trying to hold up sending out checks because I want to put my name on the check like Trump did. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
He held him up about 2 weeks. So that, these people who need to eat, they held up checks so he could put their name on it, his name on those checks.
It worked. I know somebody was talking to their gardener,
right, it did.
And they said they voted for Trump because his name was on the check. He gave me money.
Well, at least thank God. At least thank God the checks don't have to, from the federal government, aren't going through the state legislature here.
Oh,
they would be held up.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute because I think that's something that we definitely need to discuss because Whitmer and the legislature are not having a good time right now in trying to figure out how this money is going to get allocated. But, just to wrap up sort of this segment of this, how are we feeling about where this is going right now when it comes to COVID? I mean, I'm going to be eligible to get the vaccine in about another week and a half, it looks like, which is, good for me. That just means I'm getting older. But at the same time, it's going to be nice to have that. It's going to be a sense of security that I haven't had in a long time. Nancy, I think you're right there with me, waiting our turn, obviously.
I've gotten both. I've gotten both shots, and I can tell you.
You have, Allan.
Yes. Okay. I get it. I get that one.
He's bragging.
Yes. But I feel more, I'm standing in my building, I'm standing in the elevator with, 3-4 people. And I'm like, no big deal. Before it was like, oh my God, there's 3-4 people in the elevator. This is horrible.
That's right.
I feel like, it's interesting. I mean, I'm optimistic. I hear some of the doctors on TV who say this thing is going to be with us forever, that it's just going to it's going to be downgraded to a flu. It's not going to be as, harsh. I tend to, and they know better than I, but I seem to think the flu, the efficacy rate of the flu is normally between 50 or 60%. The efficacy rate of these shots is so much higher. So I'm optimistic that it's going to be a minimal invasion of our, lives in a year or so, but I could be wrong.
I also think we need to start vaccine shaming. And I'm just, I fully understand that there are people who have legitimate medical conditions, allergies, et cetera, who cannot receive conventional vaccines. I get it. I also fully believe that that most of the people who claim that they can't get the shot because they have a condition are just lying about it. And, let's just, they just don't want to get a shot for whatever reason. They believe something that they read on Dr. Mercola or the colon health website that they, kowtow to. And at some point there's going to have to be some consequences for people who are just refusing to get vaccinated.
Well, I think the emphysema rate went up something like 300% when the mask mandate went into place.
Oh yeah, right.
So
yeah,
I can't wear a mask. I have emphysema.
Yeah, exactly. But I'd like to see the airlines maybe. And you have to, if you want to get,
they were requiring tests. Why would
you want a waiver? You have to have a letter from a legitimate physician, not just Dr. Mercola, just somebody. I think they really need to put some teeth into this, and people will start quietly rolling up their sleeves.
I think Israel.
There are two challenges that we have.
Allan, then Greg.
Okay, I think Israel has a thing now that you can't go into certain places without it, and I don't think that's discriminatory. We're talking about the safety of people. My argument to people all the time is, I have some friends who'll be like, I don't know. I say, look, what you have to do is weigh the unknown, which who knows, maybe 5 years from now it impacts, the autoimmune system or whatever. You have to take the unknown and then take the known. How scary is the known? We've seen people die. We've seen people fatigued for months on end. We've seen people's organs. We've seen the heart. the kidneys impacted. I said, that's the known, and you're going to take the unknown as scarier than the known. I said, that doesn't make sense.
No, it really doesn't.
Well, there are two things I think that's important for us to consider. One is that as a PR guy, the messaging around vaccines has been horrible, terrible. You know what I mean? In terms of convincing people that this is the right thing to do. And you know it's terrible because something like, I don't know, 25% of white, 28% of white folks don't want to get it. 25% of black folks don't want to get it. And it's coming out to like somewhere around half the population is feeling uncomfortable with these vaccines. Now, it doesn't help when you have a country this week, I can't remember which one it was, Denmark or Sweden or one of them, that stopped issuing one of the vaccines because of concerns that they had about the side effects and people being injured by it. Now, see, I can't remember the name right now.
I think it was the AstraZeneca vaccine, which has not been approved in the United States.
Right. Okay. So there you go. But it's all jumbled in there with, with vaccines. And our challenge is that we have not given any of these vaccines regular FDA approval for long-term use. We're still under emergency approval for the use.
I think that'll change, though, pretty quickly. I mean, because we now have one of the largest sample sizes in history to determine whether or not this is safe for long-term use. And it's going to take a little while to figure that out. But, I think when you start looking at tens of millions of people who have been, been immunized and have not had any side effects at all, and there have been, I think, 2 people that have had some sort of death, but may or may not be related to it. I think that's going to come sooner rather than later. But I
agree. It's not here. It's not here.
And I don't disagree with you, Greg. I mean, in terms of the messaging around vaccines, because in this country, we have given the anti-vax platform way too much of the bandwidth in the discussion over the years. And it reminds me of the people who are anti-climate change, that 1% of the population out there that somehow thinks that we're not responsible or we're not in any way responsible for climate change gets as much airplay as the 99% of scientists who say it. Vaccines and climate go hand in hand in the way that we do this. We give the deniers way too much of the space to talk about it.
Because that's journalism. That's, both sides. Go ahead.
Well, you got something there, but you need to also calculate in the response from the Catholic Church and some of the right-wing, evangelical folks who are against the one-shot vaccine because it was grown from cells, so, I mean, they need to be able to combat that and have a serious discussion about it because it impacts everybody's view of
Greg,
all of the vaccines.
Are you a Catholic?
I am
not, but I do get down with the Catholic message.
I was just gonna say, as a person who was raised Catholic, I can tell you that the number of Catholics who pay attention to that kind of guidance is pretty small. I mean, there might be some. What do you think, Todd?
But here's the thing. I think from what Greg, the point is, I agree with you, Nancy, but I think Greg's point is well taken, is that these type of foundational infrastructure sites like Catholic Church, like the right wing and all these people, whether people are listening to them or not, there are people who are listening to them, the number of people. So we need to change that kind of, I don't know if we call it rhetoric. I don't want to minimize what they're saying because they do believe. But I mean, come on, the Catholic Church got all kinds of problems, Nancy, and I know. So,
oh yeah.
I mean, why can't women be of the cloth and things of that nature? So, it's something that, over time, and I think that they've made some great changes in, with the new pope that they have, and getting a pope outside of Europe to be the leader of the Catholic Church is a step in the right direction. But no, we got to get away from. But I thought that, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is to everyone, I thought that this relief bill also put education in a greater substantial point of making getting over this phobia of a necessary
what's interesting is that if you watch TV and you see all the drugs that are advertised all the time. They do, and can cause heart attack, blood clots,
line up for that
possible death. And people are like, I don't care. I've got diabetes.
It'll grow my eyelashes.
It's like, all I need to hear is maybe we need the song like Ozempic, because I want to take that drug.
Zembic. Yeah.
I mean, everybody's like, they're grilling, they're smiling, they're laughing. I'm going, I don't care what that drug is for. I want it.
Nancy, what are you showing there?
I've just been handed a bulletin.
Okay.
According, the state of Michigan has announced that all residents age 16 and up will become eligible for a vaccine on April 5th.
Wow.
So there we go.
Wow. That's a big
Breaking
deal.
news.
That's huge. That's absolutely huge.
16 and up starting April 5th.
Well, and I think that's fantastic. But real quick before we move on, and Allan, you and I were on Adolph Mongo's radio program on Saturday, and we were talking about this. Mayor Duggan stepped in it a little bit when he, originally was going to reject the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and then of course quickly backtracked and said, "Hey, we'll take those. I get sort of the bad position he was in because, if you look at the history of healthcare and healthcare inequities in this country, you can see why the mayor would be defensive about not getting quote unquote second class vaccines for citizens in Detroit. But what he made a mistake on was somehow downplaying the efficacy of that vaccine. A one-shot vaccine that is, pretty much 100% guaranteed to make sure you don't get hospitalized or die is a really, really good vaccine. And like I said, he got in some trouble for this, and I understand it. And at the same time, I also understand why he was as defensive about it as he was, because there is a history in this country of second-class healthcare for a huge segment of the population. And Greg, you're a messaging guru here. That's a difficult one.
It is a difficult about it, and one that and one that rang pretty clear to me in the speech that he gave. I ended up writing about it in a column for Deadline Detroit today. That was edited by my good friend Nancy, who helped make it
exceptionally well edited.
Exceptionally well edited. Lightly. But the point being that during his speech, he spoke so well about the inequities and challenging the inequities around housing and education and getting a job at Chrysler and all that stuff, and how he addressed it. But when he got to the vaccine, he did what you just talked about there, Craig, and flubbed it and said, well, kind of my bad. I was, wrong on the numbers. But the fear that people have out there about getting a second-class vaccine is real. And it's not just in Detroit, it's in places all around the country. And they have good reason to fear, because poor people, Black and brown people often do get the short end of the stick when it comes to, these kinds of things. You get that government cheese, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that was good cheese. I don't care what anybody says.
And when Greg had the opportunity,
he's around.
Yeah, he had the opportunity to continue to push and raise that issue up that I think would have had to make J&J and the feds and everybody say, this is why it's good, and we're going to get it to everybody, whether you live in Grosse Pointe or Detroit or Romulus. We want to get this out there as fast as we can to stop people from dying.
Well, if anybody wants to give up their J&J vaccine, for me, I'll gladly take it. So I'll take it.
You'll go get the one shot, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take connected white dudes like you getting on TV or in Deadline Detroit and getting that one shot.
That brings up a good point. This is something I posted on Facebook yesterday real quick and said, just in case anybody's worried about getting the vaccine, there was a story about Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, how people in the Ocean Reef Club, which I have been to, I know this place. It's quite fancy down in Key Largo. And everybody who actually owns property there is very, very well to do. There's 200-foot yachts all over the place down there. They were getting a special set aside of the doses back in January. I mean, these are the uber wealthy who spend their winters down in Florida on their yachts or in their houses there. They were lining up to get it at this place. And I said, look, if you're worried about the efficacy of this vaccine or whether or not it's a good thing, watch what the rich people do. Because if they are basically gaming the system to get something, chances are it's something we all want to get. They're just getting it before you do, which is the typical way that these things work. But, watch what the wealthy people are doing. Watch what they're doing. That usually gives you a clue as to what's about to come.
our former president, who liked to pretend that he was the healthiest man in the world, he and his awful wife got one before they left office in January. So, the guy who wouldn't wear a mask, who poo-pooed all the rest of this, he got it. So pay attention.
Who ended up
Hey, Tom, what's happening?
Getting very sick and taken to the hospital and was on I believe he was on a respirator, or at least he had assistance with breathing.
He wasn't on a respirator.
Okay, he wasn't on a respirator, but he did have assistance with his breathing. I mean,
I'm sure he got breathing treatment.
So are you talking about the president?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Former.
Some sources indicate that he had one of what was the medicine that they were using prior to having the vaccine, that he had one of the highest concentrated dosages of one of those of that medicine that they use.
Was it
It wasn't hydroxychloroquine. No, it was the other stuff.
It was the fancy shot. It was the much fancier shot, right?
I just don't know, but I just, from someone who told me from someone who works at the Pentagon. That's how I got it. So
all right, unimpeachable.
Well, hey Todd, one of the things, and I was curious about in relationship to the vaccine is, and Mayor Duggan has spoke about it, was this whole how are the court reacting? How are lawyers reacting? Are you guys lining up to get the shots and all that?
So for lawyers, because we have to, particularly lawyers who do criminal work, we have to either go to the jails because cases are still going on over Zoom. These clients have to talk to their lawyers. So they do have a setup and a mechanism by which I can see a client by way of Zoom through but you also have clients who have those inhibitions or those thoughts. Hey, people are still listening to me, even though it's supposed to be unrecorded. So you have to go see those individuals. You mask up, you do everything. So in the city of Detroit, I actually found this out from one of the U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys, who Andrea Hudding, who I just want to mention her name, and I'm thankful that she told me about it, is Detroit. And I've been a critic of Duggan sometimes, but I have to tell you, he has been phenomenal on the layout and the provisions that he's providing to the citizens of Detroit. His knowledge about DMC, and I think he's used that knowledge for positive gains for the citizens.
I agree. I think I went twice to get tested just prior to the vaccines over at the state fairgrounds, and it was just so impressive how well it was operated. And you have to give the mayor credit for
I have to give credit where credit's due, and I have to I've changed. I'm a believer, but so what happened is, because we go to these facilities and sometimes we have to go into the courthouse, and courthouses have shut down over the past couple of months when outbreak of COVID has happened. They've shut it completely down. So any lawyer who works in the city of Detroit, even if you don't live in the city of Detroit, can go to TCF. You call. I called. I got my first shot. I'm only 50. Well, only 50, but I'm only 50. And I'm
a young man.
I'm an optimist.
Far below that 10 year, that 60, age 60. So I called. My second shot is on March 24th. So let's go back. On March 3rd was the date that I got my first shot. I called on March 2nd. They said, "You want to come tomorrow at noon?" And I said, "Sure." And so I got in my car. They said, "Come 45 minutes before." I pulled around, and where 12th Street and 4th Street meet, a little bit beyond the post office, the line was all the way back. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be here all day. I mean, it was a little longer than 12 o'clock, but I was out of there by about 1:30. I mean, this thing was moving. And, the people there, the lady who gave me my shot, I said, "Look, I got to buy you lunch." She's like, "No, I'm doing this." I said, "No." I said, "I got to buy you lunch."
What a swell guy.
These people are angels. Those people who are working in the metal, they're down there. They have some National Guard people down there who are taking data. They got computers. They're doing the tracing. They're doing so much, because once you get your shot, you go on and sign on. So they want to track how well you're doing, whether you have any illnesses. Like you said, Craig, we're having the greatest swath of information as far as a vaccine ever. So we're going to be able to determine, number one, which one is best, because I'm imagining that they're doing it other places as far as gathering the information. I just don't think any other place in the country is doing it as well as Detroit.
All right. Well, let's move on here because there is one thing in Michigan that is not going as well as it's going in other parts of the country, and that's the relationship between the governor and the legislature right now. A lot of funding that the federal government has given to the state of Michigan is still being held up, especially money for schools, because Republicans don't like the powers that Governor Whitmer has used throughout this pandemic, and they're trying to make her give up some of her powers in exchange for this cash. It's basically some sort of like legislative extortion here. No governor that I've ever known wants to willingly give up power, even if it means this kind of a thing. And this is the kind of thing that could come back to bite the Republicans someday if they do this. This is something that's got to stop.
Before, just to say, the Republicans, really not just here in Michigan, but particularly here in Michigan and all around the country, have not put together that the pandemic is tied to the economy. When the pandemic is bad, things close down. And they just see it as like, oh, you're trying to, before during the election, you're trying to make Trump look bad. You're just ignoring the impact of COVID on our economy, which is great.
Well, I guess all I would have to say is, number one, she shouldn't give anything up. But this is another reflection of the disaster of term limits. I always think it's amusing that people say, thank God we have term limits so we can get rid of some of these awful legislators. And it's like, and all term limits does is keep an ever-renewing stream of inexperienced, awful legislators passing through Lansing.
Well, and then those legislators go on to new jobs where they can create even more damage.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean,
Pete Lucido, Macomb County prosecutor, basically just doing an open call. Hey, anybody want to sue the governor? Bring the cases here. Let's talk to me here about nursing home deaths in the state. We don't have a lot of data here, but I mean, this is really bizarre for him to sit there and just put this out there saying, let's find a way to put the governor in jail.
Yeah.
He's I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nancy.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's not.
Okay.
It's not.
Greg, then Todd.
Okay. I was going to say it's not really bizarre at all, Craig, when you consider and Allan. We know that the Republicans know about the dangers of the disease. I think there are two things happening there. One is that they will never have to be held account for the things that they put out there. Open everything up. Let's just do everything, yada, 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 because of the resistance that they're getting back from the Democratic side and the healthcare side about how stupid that is, right? And we're not going to do it. But the other thing is that they're able to raise these issues, not because they're going to be held account, but because they'll never have to be responsible. They need an issue. And this is as good as anything else. Just like that whole thing about the separation agreements. They're pointing their finger at the governor and yelling and screaming at her about, oh, this is terrible. They're wasting taxpayer dollars, when the Senate and the legislature do the exact same things, And so, I mean, it's the hypocrisy of it all, as we keep talking about, is there. And my hope was that, the Lincoln Republicans were going to be able to get in there and take control of their party again, so we can have reasonable conversations about life, as opposed to, the tail end of Trumpism.
Well, that's a tall order. All right, Todd, go ahead.
Well, a couple of different things. One, I think that those individuals who are not taking the forefront as Republicans and doing the true Republicans, not these Nazis and these fascists. That's what I look at them as, who are afraid of the Trumpism or Trump, agenda and their power base. I think they're cowards, number one. But number two, the general public was sold, to Nancy's point about this term limits. Remember, the general public back in I think it was in the 90s when they had it. Engler was the last governor we had that served 3 terms, and then he puts in term limits after that. So what he does is he changes the judiciary for the state of Michigan forevermore, and changed insurance law, changed tort law, all for the benefit of those corporate entities. But again, the general public was sold on that, not recognizing that what happens is you get these neophyte legislators who are going to listen to the lobbyists, and because lobbyists know what their job is better than them, and then so we lose good legislators, even though we've got, Lucido still being in a position of party, loyalty and things of that nature against, although, ironically, I am a Lucido fan from the perspective of being a prosecutor overall, because he has done certain things as far as criminal justice reform. So I have to look at it. I have to compartmentalize my feelings in a lot of ways. But at the same time, this agenda, we're getting nothing done in the state of Michigan because of these people who are just championing these party lines. And that's it.
And if you're honest and serious about wanting schools to reopen as soon as possible, loosen up the cash, let them get the resources they need to do it safely. Otherwise it's whining about nothing.
Partisanship. That's all it is. I'm right, and I got the power to stop you from doing something that's good.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Well, we've gone about 40 minutes. We've got some other things that I want to get to. Something that I think is being a little bit overshadowed right now, that if it weren't for COVID, obviously, and some of the big changes we've seen in terms of vaccines and everything, we'd be paying a lot more close attention to. And that's the trial in Minneapolis of Officer Chauvin, who's, of course, accused in the death of George Floyd. He did it. I mean, we saw him sit on the guy's neck for 9 minutes. But this trial is, I think, not getting the attention it deserves right now. And it's something that we should be watching, because how this jury decides this case is the reaction to this could go one of two ways, obviously. And of course, we don't want to see the level of angst and anger that we saw last year, which was totally justified. And the movement was incredibly important last year, bringing attention to criminal justice issues and police violence and everything else. But I am concerned about this. I mean, they brought in this third charge of third-degree murder, and I'm going to ask the lawyer on this one, just because, how important is it that they have at least something that they can convict him on?
Well, here's the thing. The sickening thing about this case, the one thing that I try to step away, and I want to look at it as an average citizen and not as a lawyer, because I want to gauge what a juror who's a regular citizen would possibly think. I'm also going to think differently about it because I'm Black, and this guy was white, and all those machinations. I'm being honest, and because it is a racial divide, and it is something that is racially, for a city that I always thought was racially harmonious, or had a harmony amongst the races, to find out from other individuals who were there, and I've had a chance to talk to, that it's not the case. And then after this Floyd matter, you see what happens. So I try to put myself in that position. But when I found out, one of the theories that the defense intends to unfold is that George Floyd had a certain amount of fentanyl in his system that would be enough to kill an individual like any one of us, would overdose us. But what people need to understand is the continued use of fentanyl. It was not something that would necessarily, if he was a regular user of fentanyl or heroin or those type of drugs from that family of narcotics, his body would have sustained a tolerance, and it would not be lethal for him. But when you get down that primrose path, for lack of a better word, talking about, this wouldn't have killed him because he was a user and all these other things, imagine what the average individual is going to say. That individual is going to deem him a drug addict, a drug head. And, all of that information comes out right at the feet of the jury. And regular citizens are going to say, why am I going to take this cop and ruin his life? Even though those aren't things that come out. The judge will say, look, we're not here to talk about anything else other than what evidence comes in this trial. And some of those things are not relevant as to what this officer did. But because he's an officer, because he's the police, there are all kinds of thoughts and tangential things that we think about as individuals. He must be a good citizen because he was the police. He must not have a criminal record because he was the police. These are things that we, as far as a criminal record, we know that to be the case, because you can't, and that doesn't even have to come out in trial. So I'm very concerned as to whether or not they will be able to convict this individual because of just that one issue. So I've talked enough, because there's so much more, but that one issue bothers me tremendously.
Go ahead, Allan.
I totally agree with Todd on all that. I think one of the things that we go down a dangerous path is when we start, the defense is, that person had a precondition. A healthy person would not have died with their, the leg on their neck had they not had some heart condition or had they not been a diabetic. And that's such a dangerous path to go down. It's the same thing like the Capitol Police officer who was killed. And some people say, oh, he didn't die of this. He died, of this condition or whatever. He died under a very stressful, whatever, attack.
But Alan, if I could say one thing, and I hate to cut you off, but
yeah, go ahead.
It's even worse if you're talking about this guy being a drug addict than just a precondition. If his precondition is the use of narcotics, illegal use of narcotics, it's even worse for the Floyd family.
Right.
We don't sentence people to death for that. I mean, and that's if I'm the prosecutor, that's the thing I'm going to be saying is, did he deserve to die because he maybe took an oxy every once in a while? No. I mean, and that's the whole thing. Was the use of force justified? Period. Yeah. No is the answer. It resulted in his death.
How many people, I mean, when we look at it, the oxycodone, whatever, I mean, in various forms in this country, I mean, the addiction is so great. People are legally getting it. People are buying it off the streets. It's, there's an epidemic of issues there. So anyone who is in that situation is justifiably, you can kill them and say, well, they were doing, opioids.
Well, if you didn't do bad things, you wouldn't find yourself in that situation. And I'm sorry, but you don't deserve to die for doing that kind of stuff.
You're not the typical juror, though, Craig. Everyone on this panel has a certain experience that takes them outside of being the normal juror. So, you've got to put yourself in a position, because I've picked a lot of juries, and you go through just regular people who want to just go on about their day. And here's one other thing that I have. Is there people, some of the lawyers here at the firm, we watch this in the afternoon on YouTube because you can watch some of the trial. You can watch all the trial. And we look through the jury selection. There's some jurors that you might want on that panel who are just so honest, whereas other jurors, because they're honest, they're like, I can't be fair. Now, there's some jurors on there who are not going to be upfront about them being able to be fair and opinionated for the police, for the benefit of the police. And they're just not going to be honest with you.
I thought about that, Todd, when I saw some of the clips of the jury selection. They didn't show the faces. But one of when the jurors said that I never saw the video. I'm like, all right, come on, man. What do you mean you never saw that? Everybody saw that video,
I say, who wants to have somebody judging somebody who has not seen that video?
I know. It just sounds impossible. It sounds like you're lying.
You live in Minneapolis, right? You have to live in that particular area in order to be a juror in that area. And this city was under siege by either the police or whatever, the protests that took place after that. And you're going to tell me that you didn't see that video? Something, shame on you. Either you're stupid or you want to be purposely devoid of any particular current event knowledge.
You just don't care about other people.
Well,
I think that juror got picked, though. I don't know if they made the final selection, but I think he didn't get cut because of it.
One of the things, though, that really sort of bothered me just as a citizen and somebody who would like to see improvement in this country, but a lot of commentators, especially black commentators who are, people who are like, prosecutors, former prosecutors on the various news shows saying, hey, look, if this jury doesn't have more than 2 black members, I'm really worried that this guy's going to get off. And I thought to myself, I mean, that's an indictment of our justice system right there. If they're convinced that solely the racial makeup of that jury is going to be the determining factor as to whether this guy actually gets convicted or not. And it bummed me out. That's all. And I really hope that that's not the case, that we actually get an open-minded jury and they figure this out. But, getting 11 people to agree or 12 people to agree on something is never easy.
I think, one of the things with the Kwame Kilpatrick trial is that I think it was either 5 or 6 of the jurors were people of color. And so I think there was sort of bulletproof the criticism in that verdict.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with this one. It's going to be something to watch. And my Schmuck of the Week candidate, one of my Schmuck of the Week candidates, is somebody sort of related to Black Lives Matter. I got to find the actual tweet from this person, but it was You know what? I'm just going to give this one up right now because this is not going to be my final nominee. I will find out the name, but he was giving a speech on Capitol Hill in opposition to the COVID relief bill the other day. And he was talking about Black Lives Matter, and said, hey, Black Lives Matter, clearly have revealed themselves to be people that don't like the old fashioned family. I'm going to get his name. He said,
wow.
They clearly revealed themselves to be people that don't care about the old fashioned family.
Wow.
Is that brother from Oklahoma?
AKA,
Greg. I'm going to get his name in just a little bit while you guys are talking about another issue.
I love that term. AKA Whitey.
Make America great again. That's let's go back 50 years.
Oh boy. Okay, we've got to move on here. I watched part of this, and it wasn't something that obviously, I care a whole lot about because I've never really been one to care about the royal family. But am I the only one that wasn't shocked that the old guard in Great Britain might have been concerned about Meghan Markle and the baby's color? I mean, and people are like shocked that there might be somebody in Buckingham Palace that is concerned that there might be a black child in the house. Come on.
That is
talking about it. That's it. The shock is just that they're talking about it.
I was just going to say that is the kind of thing I was thinking about this too. And, and my candidate for this was Prince Philip, although I understand that he's been ruled out as the person who made that remark. But Prince Philip is almost 100 years old. He grew up under kind of the British Empire, the days of empire. He just strikes any neutral observer as a guy who really thinks that he deserves everything that he has. And I could see him asking that. That's the kind of ignorant comment that people would make when when there would be biracial marriages, and, aren't you worried about, the color of your child's skin, that sort of thing. But to actually say it out loud, that's what, I would think even Prince Philip would not say that kind of thing out loud to the child's parents.
Prince Charles might have been dumb enough.
I think Charles. I suspect
battle of the upper class wits on Monty Python.
I suspect it was Prince Charles, and it may not be. It's all about the institution. Basically, it's a white supremacist institution where they speak the King's English, and so. But
the UK is a multiracial country, and I would think that even somebody who lives in Buckingham Palace is plugged in enough to kind of the daily life of. Okay, what Todd's doing is pants up.
You know something? You're just too good of a person to understand that. You're just seriously.
Really?
I've had a chance over the couple of years that we've known each other that just like Craig is not the average juror. You're not the average person over there in Buckingham Palace.
All right. I'll grant you that.
It's like the Catholic Church. It's like it's like University of Michigan, Penn State. It's like they're all about protecting the image of the institution, and Meghan Markle is so contrary to that, and racially. Even is just so contrary to that institution, which is so pure white. I'm watching The Crown now. After that, I started watching The Crown, and it's fascinating, really. The institution, just crazy.
Well, but what's also interesting about that is that they were discussing whether or not what impact a black baby would have on the country, as sort of like policy. How is this going to impact us policy-wise and our ability to be the figureheads of this country? And when Meghan Markle was talking about the image that she portrayed or gave to the people when she went on that tour, remember they went to Australia and they went to Africa, and she would be surrounded by these little black kids, and she talked about how they saw her. And in seeing her, they were able to see themselves as part of the monarchy, and that was a powerful, very powerful thing that she said.
Yeah, I was under the impression that she was welcomed into that family in part because she's a woman of color, and they saw this as a way of like really sort of expanding the, expanding the circle a little bit to encompass all the people in the United Kingdom who are people of color, but. Maybe nobody ever says I'm too good of a person for that, so I'm going to bask in Todd's praise for a little while.
I think you're right, though, Nancy, on two levels. One is the idea that maybe once they didn't want to have that idea because it is something to be progressive because, you know, this guy's 100 years old. He understood what colonialism was because he saw it, you know, saw it happening and he saw the dismantling of it. And, you know, he's 100 years old. You have to take him for what he is. But at the end of the day, also his grandson said it wasn't his grandfather. So he left it open to be that it was probably his father.
Yeah.
Said, and, you know, and the one that the marriage, Camilla. You know,
I mean, if it wouldn't surprise me that Prince Charles might have said that as he was putting on his dressing gown, getting ready to get into bed with his wife. But you just don't say something like that to a child's mother of all, you know, and father too. It's.
But here's
also
you marrying that black woman, you know you're gonna have a black baby now. Look out.
All right, we're running out of time. I want to clarify something real quick. The person that I was referring to earlier is Wisconsin Republican Glenn Grothman, who upstaged his fellow Wisconsinite Ron Johnson this week for being a jackass. He was talking about, of course, the earned income tax credit for single people contained in the bill. And they get more people than apparently a married couple would. And he says that this penalizes marriage. And here's the quote. I bring it up because I know that the strength that Black Lives Matter had in the last election. I know it's a group that doesn't like the old fashioned family. I'm disturbed that we have another program here in which we're increasing the marriage penalty. That was what he said. So he found a way to tie in Black Lives Matter with the stimulus relief bill, which is interesting to me. Okay.
Can I say just about this monarchy thing with Meghan Markle? I still think that they're enjoying this because the monarchy was dissolving. I mean, people weren't talking about them. So now they're the most talked about thing in the world. They already got money, but I'm saying I'm looking at the counterpoint. I mean, I think that this is exactly what they wanted because now you can have this, you know, sort of come to Jesus thought and say, hey, we're now reformed and see the change because change is coming anyway.
I'm kind of one of these people that says, pull the plug on this whole thing after Queen Elizabeth dies. Yeah. Just say, you know what? Sorry, Charles. We've had enough.
That's what they're trying to avoid happening.
I think though, I think there are people who that's their beat covering the crowd.
Yeah. There are people who travel to London from all over the world to stand outside Buckingham Palace and watch the changing of the guard. I mean, they are a tourist.
They still do that. They just don't have to basically bankroll an entire family of idiots.
I know, but I mean, but they're a monarchy. I mean, there's the
I get it. You know what?
The most shocking thing maybe was that Meghan Markle had to go to human resources, and you're like, what? They have human resources?
They have human resources.
All right, everybody.
All right,
hang tight.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
All right, Schmuck of the Week time. Glenn Grothman already got one vote, but that's sort of a half one. Every once in a while, we have multiple nominees. But who wants to go first this week? Because there are so many. Nancy wants to go first. She gets to go.
All right, I'm going with Marco Rubio because he has apparently made himself the face of making daylight saving time permanent year-round. And I, for one...
That's an Indiana thing.
Well, I know. I lived under Eastern Standard Time permanent year-round for 20 years. And I just want to say he's full of crap. I don't know what's happened to this country. All of this Sturm and Drang and hand-wringing about, oh my God, we're going to lose an hour of sleep, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, we're just a nation of wusses. And I would just like to say that I fully support springing forward and falling back, but I support the old-fashioned family as well. So there you go.
Okay, there you go. Marco Rubio. There we go. Who wants to go next?
I could go.
Go ahead.
We'll go with Todd.
And I'm going because I am sort of. It's difficult for me because I like the guy, but the more I have a friend of mine, great friend of mine. We've been talking about who would be the Schmuck of the Week. This is a very important topic. And I have to go with Cuomo, the governor Cuomo. You know, he's a bully, and oftentimes he's a bully for causes that I promote and I support. But this time, being a bully in this particular capacity and, you know, really bullying women who are probably 40 years younger than you, that's just not cool, you know.
Well,
I think he deserves at least somebody within a 52-week period to be called the Schmuck of the Week. I think he gets it this week for me.
And I'll tell you what, somebody needs to take the shovel out of that guy's hand because he's making the hole deeper.
Yeah, he really is.
All right, who wants to go next? Allan, you wanted to go.
I go with Trump surrogate Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh yes,
who tried to delay the approval of the $1.9 trillion bill by calling for an adjournment of the House, which then delays the vote, then requires every member to come on the floor and vote. And thankfully, 40 of her Republican colleagues voted against her, and the motion failed. But she's carrying on.
All she's doing. She's just monkey wrenching everything.
Yeah, she's carrying on the Trump. She's trying to carry on the Trump legacy. She's one of the few, little coals, embers, or whatever that are still there, which need to need to be extinguished. And it's.
Yeah, no, I get that one. And I'll tell you what, I mean, the Republicans already have a problem on their hands in that every single one of them voted against the recovery package, which has an approval rating over 75%. That's not smart politics. No. Greg Bowens, who's your schmuck?
Mine was tough, man, because I was thinking about Shirky and his antics up there in the GOP legislature. And then I was thinking about Piers Morgan, and his bigoted racist, ran against, Meghan Markle. And how he got called out because she dumped him,
Yeah.
But then I really, really had to settle on Tucker Carlson. The dude that's the guy that's ranting and raving and attacking women in the military for being pregnant. And calling it a disgrace. And they got to wear, adjusted uniforms during their pregnancy and all this stuff. I mean, what kind of fool is that? You know what I mean? It's just, it's
a misogynistic fool is what that is.
He can't be serious. It's all got to be a lark just to get him some ratings. But it's that kind of stupidity, foolishness that undermines us all and makes us look bad. And then he says, well, China doesn't do that and so-and-so doesn't do that. I mean, I'm just like, this is crazy, man. Why are we listening to that fool? He needs to be yanked off the air. Seriously.
Well, he's definitely getting a lot of attention this week.
He's the most popular on Fox, I think, right now. I think he's got the biggest ratings.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're going to stick with that network for my schmuck of the week. My schmuck of the week got himself into contention just this morning. His name is Brian Kilmeade. He is the co-host of Fox and Friends, which is, as I said, the best unintentional comedy on television each and every day. Brian Kilmeade comes on TV talking about the speech last night that President Biden gave. And he said, you know what? I'm tired of this. We need to stop talking about the 500,000 dead. We had that moment already. Let's talk about the future moving forward. Every time he has a chance to praise the previous administration, he not only doesn't praise them, he kicks him in the groin.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm
a great example there.
Did he mention President Trump last night? No, he did not. The fact that he didn't sit there and go, and thanks so much to President Trump for starting Operation Warp Speed, which any president in their right mind would have done. Get the vaccine on the fast track to stop this thing. But don't tell me that I'm over talking about the 500,000 dead. No, those 500,000 people are dead as a result of this virus, which the previous president did everything in his power to minimize and to put out false information and lead people down the wrong path about the way to deal with this, and showed us exactly what not to do in dealing with a pandemic. And answer me this question, Mr. Kilmeade. When is the last time that President Trump ever said a kind word about his predecessor? Did he ever say anything nice about inheriting a really great economy? Nope, not once. In fact, he tried to suggest that the country was going down to hell. He never once praised the previous president, and it's only been 50 days. If something comes to light down the road that I can sit there and say, wow, Donald Trump really deserves credit for that, I will be the first one to step up and do it. But don't ask Joe Biden to do it when he's talking about how to save the country. And don't tell me that you're sick of talking about 500,000 dead people. It didn't have to be this way, you jackass. Schmuck of the week, Brian Kilmeade.
Ooh.
Hey, tell us how you feel, brother.
You know what? Kilmeade's been on my list forever. And I watched that program. sometimes, and it.
Can I go and remove my Schmuck of the Week since I was lukewarm and join the Schmuck of the Week? I mean,
please.
I mean, that's the kind of speeches that we need for Schmuck of the Week, you know.
And like I said, I didn't have time to prepare that one. That's just off the cuff right there. So, because it came this morning. And like I said, on Monday, I'm sure he'll do something else that will put him back on the list, because he and Steve Doocy, wow. They managed to come up with some whoppers every week. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up. This has been a fun episode today, and actually quite informative one. I thought this was really good debate today. So thanks to my guest, Todd Perkins. We always appreciate it, sir. Thank you for coming out of court today to help us out with the program. Appreciate that. Greg Bowens, thank you very much, and keep up the good work in Grosse Pointe Park, sir. They are in need of your assistance and understanding. We appreciate the work that you're doing over there. Nancy Derringer and Allan Lengel of Deadline Detroit, we always appreciate you being with us. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering today's broadcast. Thanks to Lynette's Shrimp House for sponsoring this program. I certainly do appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for watching, sharing, liking, commenting, all that stuff. Don't forget, you can get this in podcast form a little bit later on today. The video will be available on deadlinedetroit.com probably tomorrow morning if you want to rewatch it or share it with your friends. That's a good thing to do. We always appreciate it. All the views, all the attention is a wonderful thing, so we can keep this little program going. And also, don't forget, support deadlinedetroit.com. deadlinedetroit.com/membership, $3 a month, and Deadline Detroit will be most appreciative. Will we not?
Yes, we will.
We certainly will. And okay. Everybody's going to be eligible for that shot here in Michigan pretty darn soon, according to today's bulletin from Nancy Derringer and the Detroit News. April 1st, I think, was the day, correct?
April 5th.
April 5th. Good. April Fool's Day. People might not believe it. April 5th. That's pretty good. So until then,
stay home safely.
The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.